Welcome to Good Mike Works, pay-per-view and DVD reviews, volume 14. As promised, I wanted to come up here and talk about what I consider to be my favorite Royal Rumble of all time. 1992 was up there, but I think I liked Royal Rumble 2001 just a little bit more for a lot of reasons. These were great days back in the Attitude Era. I love going back and watching some of the pay-per-views from this time period because, you know, the crowd is just so into it. Everything is so over. Everything is so hot. The fans are just hanging on every match, every angle, every storyline. It was just such a beautiful time. And this was one of my favorite pay-per-views, not only for the awesome Royal Rumble match, but for the great undercard as well. We had 3 big title matches, well actually 4 if you count the women's title match, so this pay-per-view was loaded. Now even though this pay-per-view was pretty stacked and a lot of great things took place on it, it's not a perfect pay-per-view. There were some things about it that weren't totally great, but I think overall a lot of people probably agree with me that this is one of their favorite Royal Rumbles ever. The show emanated from the New Orleans Arena on January 21st, 2001, so we're just a couple of days away from the 14-year anniversary of this show. Unbelievable. And I'll tell you what, this Royal Rumble did not waste any time, and they did not fuck around. They opened the show with a tag team title match, Edge and Christian, champions, defending their titles against the Dudley Boys. This was right in the middle of the great resurgence of the WWE tag team division. Those 3 teams specifically, Edge and Christian, Dudleys, and Hardys, I mean, they were just setting the world on fire with all of their tag team matches and their ladder matches and their TLC matches, and they were about to have another big one at WrestleMania 17, just a couple of months after this. As I was watching this match, I mean, it was a very good match, but it wasn't by any means a great match, but still, the overness of these 2 tag teams, plus it was the opening match of an Attitude Era pay-per-view, a major pay-per-view like the Royal Rumble, the crowd was jacked. During these days, I always liked the opening card matches because if you remember back then or if you went to shows, the WWE, that's when they really started going over the top with their pyro and their openings. And there was just something about the atmosphere. There was something about the feel of the opening match on a pay-per-view during this time. You remember how the arena would still be smoky, you know, from all of the fireworks, that you could hear the big fans, the big industrial fans going, trying to suck out all the smoke. So it had like a different sound or a different tone to it or whatever. It's just one of those little things that I noticed and little things that I always remembered from these big shows during this time period. So it was this very like hazy, smoky, jacked up, over, crazy tag team match. The fans were so into it. The Dudley Boys won the tag team titles basically clean. They were actually going into the match injured as well. I think the week before on Raw or SmackDown, Edge and Christian had attacked them backstage and hit them with a couple concertos in the hallway. Fucked both their heads up, and in storyline, they both had concussions and they went into this match anyway, which is kind of funny. That's a storyline that the WWE would never do now with the head injuries and all of that. But they both had concussions, went into the match and wrestled Edge and Christian anyway, and ended up winning back the tag team titles. And I think they would hold them until WrestleMania. I think they were champions going into that big TLC match at WrestleMania 17, and Edge and Christian won them again. But those tag team days back then were so fun. I loved it when the Dudley Boys were there. They were so good when they first came in, and they were younger. You know, Devon and Bubba Ray were amazing. I mean, I just thought they were such a great tag team. They had great moves. They had great style. If there was ever a tag team I can think of in my head that could even come close to reaching the stature and the legendary status of a team like the Road Warriors, I think the Dudley Boys would be it. And I'm glad they got over so hard in WWE, and they had great multiple runs with the tag team titles, because when they first came in from ECW, they were not really over, and I don't even think they were really accepted by the WWE locker room right away. I don't remember them doing anything good. Bubba Ray had that horrible stuttering gimmick that they were doing. They were just fucking up the Dudley Boys team and the Dudley Boys character completely. They end up winning the titles, kind of developing their own kind of ideas and their own WWE version of the Dudley Boys, and the fans loved it, and they dropped the whole stuttering thing, and the Dudley Boys, you know, really surprised me, because when they came in at first, it was not looking good, and they became one of the best tag teams WWE has ever had. A lot of backstage segments and promos at this Royal Rumble as well, and this is one of the not-so-great moments of the pay-per-view. They cut backstage after the tag team title match to Triple H and Stephanie's dressing room, and they're having one of the most horrible television conversations the two of them have ever had. It was bad acting, it was overacting, you could tell the two of them were still in that infancy of their on-screen chemistry as far as being husband and wife. Stephanie was still kind of inexperienced. She overacted one of her lines, you know, during the backstage spot. It just wasn't good. Just go back and watch it and you'll see what I mean. It just seemed like it was awkward, or something was just off about the segment. They definitely didn't seem like the typical Triple H and Stephanie that we know of today. And then it doesn't get any better from there. Drew Carey, who was a guest of WWE's, he was there during this Royal Rumble to plug a pay-per-view special special that he was going to be doing around the Super Bowl time. So they brought him in for a little celebrity rub, and also they could help him promote his pay-per-view. So he barges in on Stephanie and Triple H, and it's almost as if the writing team or the creative team just didn't really tell Drew Carey to say anything. They just said, say whatever you want. This is one of the cases where a scripted promo would have been necessary because Drew Carey doesn't know anything about the WWE. When he comes in, it's so funny. Triple H introduces Stephanie McMahon to him, and he goes, oh, hey, what'd you do? Marry the boss's daughter? And Triple H is like, yeah, about a year ago now. And he goes, oh, sorry, I don't really watch WWE. And then he says, hey, you know who I ran into today? He goes, Kamala. And Triple H is like, okay, Kamala. And Drew Carey says, did you know Kamala sings now? And then Triple H says, yeah, I might have heard that. And then they go into plugging whatever Drew was there to plug. It was just so dumb. I mean, I guess it might have been the point. I mean, they were trying to make Drew Carey seem like this guy that was completely in over his head and out of his element, but he should have been at least a little bit knowledgeable of the product. He asks Triple H and Stephanie where he can find Vince McMahon so he can talk to him about his pay-per-view or whatever, so they send him on his way to find Vince. And then you immediately get another backstage segment, and then things start looking up, because I never got tired of those hilarious APA backstage segments where they were back there playing poker and getting hammered, and they had the fucking wooden door that you had to go through, and you couldn't come in unless you went through the door. So they're back there, they're playing their cards, they have their cigars, they got beer cans all over the place, and getting hammered, by the way, before their Royal Rumble match later on. So WWE is promoting, filling your body with alcohol before you go out there and put other wrestlers' lives in your hands. Very good, WWE, quite responsible. But anyway, they're talking to each other about showing each other their numbers. I'll show you mine if you show me yours or whatever. So they pull out their numbers and look at them, and they laugh. Of course, none of this is revealed to the fans what their numbers are. And then Crash Holly barges in, who I think he's had some sort of like an on-screen friendship maybe with the APA on television during this time. I do remember a little bit of that. And he's in there basically telling Farouk and Bradshaw that even though he knows they're friends, that they wind up in that Royal Rumble match together at the same time, he's going to have no choice but to toss their butts over the top rope. And then he storms off. And then Farouk and Bradshaw kind of look at each other and just continue drinking their Budweiser. Fucking great shit. The next matchup is a doozy. How can we ever forget the Chris Benoit versus Chris Jericho ladder match for the Intercontinental title? One of my favorite ladder matches of all time. It's a shame, like I say every time I talk about a Chris Benoit match or a Chris Benoit memory, it's a shame that this moment in this match pretty much goes unrecognized because of what Chris Benoit did. But it doesn't change the fact that it happened, and it was an awesome match, and it was a brutal match. And when I watched it back, the brutality of it was what really struck me. There was no blood, which I thought was fine, because it was so unbelievably hard-hitting. It was almost painful to sit there and watch it because you saw the damage that these guys took. You look at this match, and are you really surprised that Chris Benoit got his brain scrambled? He took a hell of a beating on his head during this match alone with the chair shots and this amazing diving headbutt that he completely missed and did not protect himself at all, dove off the top of the ladder. Jericho moves out of the way, and he just lands face fucking first. There was another spot where Benoit did a suicide dive outside of the ring, and Jericho was out there waiting for it with a chair and smacked him right in the head. I mean, Benoit took an unbelievable beating, not to mention all the damage these guys did to their bodies using the ladder as a weapon, throwing them at each other, very innovative spots. They really did well, because by this point we had seen quite a few ladder matches, and these guys made this entertaining as shit. Benoit had come into the WWE just a year prior, and basically from the moment he got there, he was working with Jericho right away. They were feuding on and off for the Intercontinental title all throughout the year of 2000. They had a great SummerSlam match that I witnessed live. They exchanged the Intercontinental title a couple of times and had developed a pretty storied rivalry, and this match was really the culmination of that, or the blow-off, because just a few months later, these guys would be friends. They would be tag team partners, tag team championship partners, and their performance in this match, I think it was my favorite Chris Benoit versus Chris Jericho match ever. How can we ever forget the awesome Walls of Jericho on the ladder? That was such a great spot. When I was watching that back, the crowd fucking went ape shit when Jericho put Benoit on that move. It is such an iconic picture because it's just one of those things when you're in a ladder match and you've already had quite a few ladder matches in wrestling and on television for several years, you have to stay innovative. You have to constantly come up with new things to do with the ladder. And I don't think we've seen anybody put their finisher on a guy on top of the ladder before. It was a tiny bit unrealistic looking because in order for this to work, Benoit has to completely cooperate. So it's not, Benoit was basically putting himself in the move as well, but it looked painful as shit. Benoit's back was completely bent backwards over the top of the ladder. It just looked horrifying, and they stayed in that move for about 20 seconds or so until Benoit finally flipped off backwards. Even the finish I liked because it wasn't overdone. These guys had taken the fans on such an incredible ride throughout the match with all these great spots and all these great innovative moments. They didn't need to reinvent the wheel or anything to come up with a great finish here. They kept it short and simple, and Benoit got smacked in the back, I think, with a chair by Jericho, and Jericho pushed the ladder over, and Benoit hit the ropes and flew to the outside, and he just couldn't get up in time. Jericho was very slow getting the ladder into position and climbing up. You thought for sure Benoit was going to get up and run in and make the save. But it was basically the story that final bump that he took was just too much for him to recover from, and he was clawing, he was scratching, trying to climb up on the ring apron, trying to get up on the ropes. Jericho was slowly climbing up the ladder, which is also smart because in ladder matches, one of the most frustrating things if you're watching one from a real life point of view, you're like, why is he taking so fucking long to get up the ladder? And the reason he's taking so long to get up the ladder is because he's waiting for his opponent to come make the save because that's the spot. And sometimes at the end of ladder matches, when you finally get to the finish, the guy just climbs up there so fucking quickly and snatches the ladder, and you're like, why didn't he climb that fast earlier when he had the opportunity? So Jericho kept it real. And if they're going to slowly climb up the ladder throughout the whole match, then they're going to slowly climb up the ladder for the finish of the match. And Jericho just climbs one rung at a time. Benoit is fighting to get back in the ring. He just can't do it. Jericho finally gets up to the top and grabs the title. And the fans popped like a motherfucker. It was a great match. Awesome. I think Jericho and Benoit earned a lot of people's respect that night. They sure as hell earned mine. And I love the fact that the WWE gave the win to Jericho. That was a match where you would kind of think Benoit would win. Like I said earlier, even though WWE was happy to have Jericho and they had already given him a few big matches and a few big pay-per-views and a few opportunities, I still think they considered Benoit to be just a notch above him on the depth chart. So I was surprised and happy and pleased that Jericho got that victory. And it was just another great chapter that was written in this great Chris Benoit versus Chris Jericho feud. And like I said, it's just a shame that a lot of these moments are going to go unremembered by WWE because of the circumstances surrounding Benoit. Next, we go backstage again for a little bit more fun and shenanigans. This time, they're showing Drew Carey in Vince McMahon's dressing room with Trish Stratus. Vince is not there. And Drew's talking to her a little bit. I guess he's kind of hitting on her. He even offers her some chapstick. He's like putting it on his lips, and he's like, here, you want some? It's just fucking hilarious. And she's like, no, that's okay, Drew. Look, I really like you, and it was nice to meet you, but I'm kind of involved with somebody, and I just think we should be friends or something like that. And Drew's like, you're involved with somebody? Is it serious? And he's like, well, if you're thinking about taking a step up and moving over to me, and as soon as he says that, Vince McMahon walks in. He seems to be a little bit on to what Drew Carey was doing, so he decides, after Drew Carey asks him for advice on how to promote his pay-per-view coming up in a few weeks, he says, since you're so good at improv, which apparently is what the pay-per-view is about, he goes, how about you improv tonight, and you are going to be an actual participant in tonight's Royal Rumble match. And in one of the funniest responses, Drew Carey is almost like, okay, but, do you think I might get hurt? Is there any chance I will get hurt? Like, what kind of fucking question is that? You're getting ready to go into a ring with, 30 guys twice your size. Yeah, you're probably going to get fucking hurt. And later on, when he actually does appear in the Royal Rumble, you actually might be surprised on some of my comments on that. So we'll get to that in a little bit. They then cut to the locker room where Chyna is getting ready for her WWE Women's Title match against Ivory, who is the champion and one of the members of Right to Censor, if you can remember that fucking annoying group. And at the time, she was kind of involved with Billy Gunn, and Billy Gunn is in there trying to convince her not to go into the ring because a couple of weeks prior on Raw, the Right to Censor had seriously injured Chyna's neck by giving her, I think, like a spike pile driver. And they sold it full blown. She didn't move. They brought out the ambulance and the stretcher and the neck brace and all of that and moved her out of there. And against doctor's orders, she was going to go into this title match at the Royal Rumble, even though she had a severely damaged neck. So that was kind of the storyline. And plus, Chyna had just come off of working with men. So now she's going to go in against Little Ivory. So they were basically making this angle to where Chyna would be weakened and Ivory might actually stand a chance. And like I said earlier, even though this pay-per-view was awesome, it was not perfect. And this was a horrible match and a horrible storyline. I just found it really uncomfortable. I mean, looking back, for the Attitude Era, it was nothing. Nobody thought anything about it. But looking back now, it's like, they're really making a storyline out of something that's really serious. I know that's what wrestling does, but they're just a couple of years removed from Droz's injury. This was 2 years after that, less than 2 years after that. And they're doing a storyline so serious involving the neck and paralyzation and all of that. And then Chyna goes into the ring with Ivory for the title match, and sure enough, she does one of her moves, and they do the big neck spot. She goes for one of her, backflip elbows when her opponent is in the corner, and as soon as she hits Ivory, she falls face first to the mat, doesn't move at all. It actually looked really terrible. Chyna didn't really execute that move very well, and when she fell, it just didn't look good. It looked extremely fake, and she falls down to the mat. Ivory actually pins her and wins, but she doesn't move, and then the referees call for help. The doctors come out there, the ambulance, the announcers, Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross. What I didn't like about this is they were selling this the way they sold Owen Hart. Hart, they had that really somber tone. And I'm not saying they sold Owen Hart, but, they were very serious during that. It kind of reminded me, their somber tone reminded me of that night, and I don't ever want to be reminded of that night. I just didn't like it. Now, Chyna, I think, of course, would recover from this. She would win the belt at WrestleMania 17, would she not? And then after that, I think she was gone. She wasn't there much longer. But this whole angle with her in the neck and the broken neck and being paralyzed and all that, I just did not like. I never liked it any time during the Attitude Era when the WWE just maybe took it a step too far. I didn't like the Terry Runnels and the fucking miscarriage and, shit like that. Just when they kind of tread in a little bit of sensitive territory, maybe for some people. And one of their own people, like I said, Draws, had just gone through something, this very thing in reality, and he's paralyzed from the fucking neck down, or maybe waist down. Either way, the guy's in a wheelchair for life, and I just don't think it was right for them to make an angle out of this right at this point. Or really ever. Just not one of my favorite things they've ever done. Plus, they were doing it with Chyna. She's not the world's greatest actor as it is. Bad angle, bad match, and pretty much the only dark spot, I think, on the whole pay-per-view. So as they're wheeling Chyna's paralyzed ass out of the arena, we go backstage again. This time Trish Stratus is in, I guess, the makeup room, and Stephanie walks in. The two of them have a little conversation. They're each going to be in a corner of the participants in the WWE World Heavyweight Title match that is coming up in just a little bit. They, of course, have some bitchy things to say to each other, and Trish walks off. We then cut to the locker room where Drew Carey is sitting there, and Harvey Whippleman brings him his ring gear. Here you go. Vince told you to put this on. You're going to need this for your match later tonight. And then they have Caine walk by, and Drew Carey goes, "Hey, who's the goofy guy in the mask?" And he stands up and tries to, I guess, shake Kane's hand, and he just walks away or something. So a little interaction between Caine and Drew Carey, which was funny, and that would, that would be a little precursor to what we would see later. They then show Vince backstage talking to D'Lo Brown and Tiger Ali Singh, and I believe it was Chaz. I forgot that they had formed this fucking tag team, this weird-ass tag team. It was short-lived. I think they had a match on Sunday Night Heat earlier on in the night where if they won their match, one of them would get to go into the Royal Rumble, and they were trying to figure out which one of them it would be. And Vince McMahon interrupts and says, "You know what? It's not going to be any of you. You've been replaced." And in one of the dumbest things, and it's so typical Attitude Era, you got Tiger Ali Singh, who when the WWE first signed him, I think in like 96, when their talent roster was really depleted, they had really high hopes for him, and he never panned out. He was just awful. And he was basically in the role of a manager for this tag team of D'Lo and Chaz. And he asks Vince McMahon, "Who have we been replaced with?" And Vince says, "Drew Carey." And he goes, "Drew Curry? Who is Drew Curry?" And then Vince just kind of shakes his head and walks off. So, typical shit the WWE did back then. Ha ha ha, Drew Curry, we get it. Very funny, WWE. What the fuck? But anyway, WWE title match time. This was an interesting one because it was a heel match. You had monster heel Triple H, who had just come off of revealing himself as the one that put Austin out of action for a year and being behind the whole hit and run angle. But I remember thinking at the time, I thought it might wind up leading to an Austin versus Triple H match for the title at WrestleMania. Just when Triple H revealed himself as the guy behind the hit and run, I kind of thought, since that happened in the fall, that would be a great way to build a WrestleMania. I'm glad they went with The Rock and Austin instead, but I remember at the time thinking that was the direction they were going to go. Kurt Angle, of course, is no picnic either with the fans. He's just as big a heel, just from a completely different direction. He's more of the whiny, obnoxious, fucking delusional type of heel, full of comedy and one-liners and things like that. But in the ring, he's a hell of an athlete. I think a lot of the fans really loved to hate Kurt Angle because he was so stupid, but yet every time he got in the ring, he fucking performed. And they tie in the women in this, too. Now, they have Stephanie McMahon, of course. She's going to be in Triple H's corner. But in Kurt Angle's corner, he selects Trish Stratus. Now, she's having an on-screen affair, with Vince McMahon during this time. So I guess he brings in Trish just to fuck with Stephanie, knowing that it's going to infuriate her. She's already very threatened by the idea of Vince McMahon hanging around Trish Stratus, as her status as the dominant female in the WWE is being questioned, with Trish Stratus hanging around Vince. So it's just a little subplot in this match, and these women are going to play a role in the outcome of this match, you would assume. And plus, Triple H and Kurt Angle, they kind of had a thing. I always said that I wish they would have done more with this angle in this feud, because they had wrestled, I think it was Unforgiven, maybe just a couple of months before this, and this was when Stephanie McMahon started hanging around Kurt Angle, and he kissed her, and, there was this kind of a love triangle. I actually thought they could have gone really far with that, and I think they just ended up having that one match. Now, they worked SummerSlam, triple threat match with The Rock, but I think it was the next month they had the one-on-one match. Triple H won, and I remember something. I should have gone back and watched it, but I do remember the ending having something to do where I think Triple H made Stephanie choose, and she kicked Kurt Angle in the balls, and then he gave her like a really aggressive kiss at the end. So you could kind of see that was probably the end of it, but I thought they could have gone further. The next month, Kurt wrestled The Rock and won the title, so I thought Kurt Angle and Triple H could have gone a lot farther, and their angle could have meant a lot more, but they changed directions and put Triple H as the guy that was behind Austin's hit and run and went in a completely different direction with his storyline, because Triple H, you felt like he was almost on the verge of a babyface turn, if he hadn't turned babyface already, and then he turns around and, becomes the guy behind the whole deal with Austin. So it was just kind of a strange, few months there, still very entertaining, but it was one of those early indications that WWE, they didn't have any long-term plans in place. When they finally came up with the idea that somebody was going to be behind the hit and run, I don't think they had decided who it was going to be yet. And I think if you're going to come up with a big angle like that, you have to have your conclusion figured out, or at least have an idea what you're going to do. And I think a lot of that shit with Rikishi and Triple H was just kind of come up with on the fly. There's no way they could have intended that a year prior when they actually did the hit and run. So you had tons of stuff tied into this championship match. You had Trish and Stephanie, of course, at each other's throats. Triple H had just become this monster heel who, incidentally, it's amazing that he's able to even compete in this match because he survived a fall from a forklift inside of a car. In all my years doing commentaries, I don't know if I've ever even mentioned that angle. I should talk about it one day, but if you remember the Survivor Series in 2000, just a couple of months before this, was the big Stone Cold versus Triple H match, and he chased him outside. Triple H jumps in a car. Austin puts a car on this giant forklift or crane, lifts the car fucking at least 50, 60, 70 feet in the air, and then just drops it flat on its top. Triple H is seemingly in this car. No human being could survive that. Nothing could survive that. Not only would Triple H be dead, he would be squashed. There would be blood squirting out of each side of that automobile. So it was kind of one of those things where, remember when the Big Show fell off the roof of Cobo Arena when he made his debut, his first wrestling match in WCW. I think it was Halloween Havoc 94 or 95, one of those 2 years. And there was monster trucks involved. There was some sort of a monster truck competition on the roof. And then Giant Hogan wind up brawling with each other. And Hogan actually throws him off the roof. And he apparently landed, 100 feet down in the parking lot or something like that, and then comes out for the match about an hour and a half later without a scratch on him. So what the fuck? So you look back at that and laugh, but this Triple H shit is almost more ridiculous. So anyway, pretty funny shit leading up to this match, but here you got a heel match, Triple H versus Kurt Angle. Who are the fans going to cheer for in this thing? I kind of remember rooting for Triple H. I always liked him in this feud. I would have loved to see him beat Kurt Angle and win the WWE title, but in retrospect, I'm glad they went in the direction they went with Rock and Austin, because that was awesome. But the match wasn't bad. It had its share of wrestling and drama and surprises, and as a matter of fact, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time I can remember hearing Triple H's Motorhead theme music. I think it debuted at this show. But I ended up watching almost this whole match, and when I look back at some of these matches, I'm absolutely mesmerized by how good Kurt Angle is, because when you just think back then, how young in the business he was only there a couple of years, he had far less training than anybody probably has in NXT right now, and he looked like he was one of the best wrestlers that had ever lived. 2 years in, he was already turning heads like that. 2 years in, he was already making people think that he is one of the best. And he had a great run. He had a great heel run as champion during those few months there. He was surviving every pay-per-view by hook or by crook, but also surviving on his ability in the ring because he was good. They even had him survive the big Hell in the Cell match. I think that was at Armageddon the month before, where there was 6 or 7 of those guys in there, and he still came out on top. So Kurt Angle, he was impressing me during his run. And in this match, he looks like he's just about beat, but of course the referee gets knocked out, and of course in one of the predictable moments of the pay-per-view, I kind of thought this could happen at the time. I figured if Triple H didn't win the title, it would probably be because of Stone Cold Steve Austin who would interfere, and sure enough, he came down and beat the absolute hell out of Triple H, got him in the ring, hit him with the championship belt and gave him the Stone Cold Stunner, picked up Earl Hebner and tossed him back in the ring, and walked to the back as Earl crawls over to Kurt Angle, who just drapes an arm over Triple H in the classic slow 1, 2, 3 by the injured referee, and Kurt Angle retains the title. It was funny, the fans popped hard for Austin coming out there and beating Triple H, but then they kind of got silent when the 3 count hit. It was almost as if they didn't know who they wanted to win. It reminded me of when Austin, of course, helped Mankind win the title in '99 from The Rock on Raw. I just chronicled that night in my first ever This Day in History, which is available on the channel. Check it out. But Austin came out and beat the hell out of The Rock with a steel chair, and then you get the 3 count with Mankind getting the pin, and the roof came off that place. place one of the loudest pops I can ever remember seeing. As much as fans hated Triple H and loved Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think the majority of them in the crowd that night might have wanted Triple H to win because, man, they really seemed disappointed when Kurt Angle survived yet another pay-per-view. But that would be the final time he would survive, however, because the next month he would finally cough up that belt to The Rock, who would go on to face Austin at WrestleMania. We're now on to the Royal Rumble match, and it was gonna be good. They would warm us up with a Rock promo backstage doing his typical Rock shit. Then they show a video package, and then it's Rumble time. I stand by my opinion that this is the greatest Royal Rumble match of all time. Even going back and watching it, I had forgotten how much I actually loved it. To me, it was the way a Royal Rumble match should be booked and written. It really looked like WWE put a lot of time and a lot of effort, and this was one of the most, I think, beautifully timed and planned out Royal Rumbles ever. There were so many different stories going on. It was almost as if there were different chapters in the Royal Rumble, and it seemed to go on forever. It was just an amazing blend of drama and suspense and comedy and violence. I mean, it was just beautifully done. And the talent in this match, oh my God, the stars in this match were unbelievable. If 1992 had a jam-packed roster, this one was, I think, even better. Humongous names were in this Royal Rumble. There were even a few surprise entrants. It was just all around fantastic. Now, I'll start with what seemed to be the first chapter. Jeff Hardy drew number 1 in this thing. I think number 2 was Bull Buchanan, and number 3 was Matt Hardy. The Hardy Boys get rid of the first couple of people in there and then start fighting with each other. And then number 5 turns out to be Drew Carey. Now, like I said earlier on, I actually had no problem at all with Drew Carey being in this match because the WWE did it right. They didn't overdo it. It's not like it was David Arquette and they made him WWE champion. They just had him come out there helping him promote some fucking pay-per-view. He made an appearance in the Royal Rumble match, no big deal. If somebody lost a spot in that thing, some of these guys were getting eliminated 10 seconds into the match, so it's not like it mattered. And he came out there and he wasn't a significant part of the match. He was out there for just a little bit. What was hilarious is he comes out there, he's getting in the ring as Matt and Jeff Hardy are fighting in the corner. Matt and Jeff eliminate themselves, leaving Drew Carey in the ring all by himself. And if what we saw earlier on backstage was any indication, you knew when that buzzer went off, it was gonna be Caine. And sure enough, the pyro goes off and Caine comes out at number 6, and Drew Carey damn near shits himself. Caine gets in the ring. Drew kind of stands there. He doesn't run away. He even offers Caine money. And then just as Caine is about to choke slam him, I think the next competitor came out, which I think was Raven. He attacked Caine from behind, and Drew Carey, who escaped the choke slam unscathed, kind of looks around and actually waves at the crowd and says, "See ya," and he just climbs over the top rope and eliminates himself. See, that's what I'm talking about. If you're going to bring a celebrity in, or you're going to bring somebody from the outside and put them all over your TV show, you don't have to bring them out there 3, 4, 5 different times for 10-minute segments. Just come out there, make it short and sweet, make it funny, and I don't think anybody even had a problem with Drew Carey being in that match. That was kind of funny. It's not like he was number 30. It's not like he almost won the thing. You know, Vince McMahon had even won it a couple of years before. So this was totally fine. I had no problem with this particular celebrity appearance. Now, this actually led to Drew Carey being inducted into the WWE Celebrity Wing of the Hall of Fame, if you can believe that. But still, pretty memorable and pretty funny, and I had absolutely no problem with it whatsoever. So now we're basically into Chapter 2 of the Royal Rumble match, and the next, I think, 3 or 4 competitors would all be hardcore division guys. This was when the hardcore title was around. You had Steve Blackman out there, Al Snow, Raven, Crash Holly, Grandmaster Sexay was even out there, and they brought all of the weapons into the ring. They had everything. Broomsticks, trash cans, shopping carts, fucking VCRs, you name it. The whole ring was just littered with shit. So now you're into this hardcore phase of the Royal Rumble with all this crazy shit. Caine is taking an unbelievable beating, and then he goes on to basically eliminate every single one of those guys, leaving him in the ring by himself. And for just another piece of comedy, now that the hardcore chapter of the Royal Rumble is over, the next competitor out is the Honky Tonk Man. I remember loving this when Honky came out there, because we hadn't seen the Honky Tonk Man in the WWE in a few years. And the fact that he's coming out there, and of all people, the only person in the ring is Caine, that's pretty fucking good. There was something about Caine back then, you know, in his early days of his character, that even though he was so menacing, and even though he was such a badass, basically, and everybody was frightened of him, there was something also about him that could be very funny. And whenever he interacted with other people, or women, or somebody that just wasn't like him, it was always just really funny. You couldn't even see his face. You know, even underneath the mask, sometimes just a small tilt of the head or just something small that Caine was doing would basically speak volumes as to what he was thinking, and he basically communicated that way. And even though he talked a little bit, he really didn't need to. Sometimes Caine could be very funny without even knowing it. Honky Tonk Man comes out there, gets on the mic, does his old typical Honky Tonk Man shit. Thank you, you're a beautiful audience. I know you all want to hear me sing. He's got his fucking guitar out there. They start playing his music again, and he's just singing along with it. Caine finally says enough of this shit, grabs the guitar, and just waffles Honky with it. The guitar explodes, and the camera just focuses right on Caine's face, and he just kind of shakes his head as if, like, this dumb fuck. And that's what I'm talking about. That's all Caine had to do, was just shake his head no, and he had me laughing my ass off. I know currently in my commentaries I get very, very upset when I talk about Caine because these were the days of Caine that I loved. He was so fucking awesome back then. And to see him out there now, you know, in 2015 looking like the manager of a Staples, it fucking pisses me off. Caine's performance was awesome in this match. It was really the backbone of this Royal Rumble, this long arcing storyline that they had going through the whole match where Caine was in there at number 6 and he was there till the end. I think he eliminated 10 guys, maybe 11 if you count Drew Carey, although Drew Carey kind of eliminated himself. I was so happy to see this because I'm a big Caine fan, and plus you don't see performances in the Rumble like this from big guys. Yes, Kevin Nash had a streak a couple years prior to this where he eliminated like 6, 7, 8 guys in a row, but he wasn't in the ring for very long. Caine, despite his size, is showing his stamina. This was the kind of thing in previous years that was reserved for guys like Shawn Michaels or Ric Flair or Bob Backlund or some of these smaller guys that could stay out there for an hour and not lose their steam. Caine's damn near 7 feet tall, he's 300 pounds, and he's out there for almost an hour in this thing, eliminating guys left and right, performing at a high level throughout the whole match. Getting his fucking ass kicked, you know, with fucking weapons and chairs and just everything. He just took an ass kicking in this thing, and his performance was amazing. He made this Royal Rumble for me. Caine is my Royal Rumble 2001 MVP. And by this point, after Caine sticks that guitar up Honky Tonk Man's ass, Caine's in the ring again by himself. And who's the next guy to come out at lucky number 13? The Rock. The Rock basically ends Caine's path of destruction. Caine would not be eliminating The Rock the way he did everybody else. The Rock and Caine would have some pretty good brawling, and they would use this time to kind of beef up the ring again with a few more guys, and we're pretty much into the third chapter. Another big surprise in this Rumble was number 23, The Big Show. The Big Show was a surprise entrant in this. Now, I remember watching this. I was watching Sunday Night Heat right before this pay-per-view. I had people over. I remember this night like it was yesterday. And as a matter of fact, I even have that Sunday Night Heat and the live pay-per-view broadcast on a burned DVD. I taped it myself live that evening. And I went back and watched Sunday Night Heat, and I could not find what I was looking for, but I know it's there because I remember it plain as day. Anyway, the Big Show's surprise return was actually spoiled on Sunday Night Heat. I think it was an accident. I remember watching an interview, a backstage interview with Michael Cole or someone, and if you look far in the distance, you can actually see the Big Show just standing there talking to one of the agents. And I remember 3 of us watching the pay-per-view all said, hey, look, it's Big Show. He's going to be one of the guys in the Rumble. Now, you wonder why he was a surprise entrant. That's because WWE sent him down to OVW to get in shape. Apparently, they thought he was getting overweight. Big Show really, he had a rocky start in the WWE as well. I don't think he was very accepted right at first into the locker room. And plus, you have to remember, he was coming from WCW, a place that was corrupt as fuck and highly political. And, you know, Big Show probably, the only way he knew how to behave in a backstage environment was from what he learned in WCW. And I think a lot of people in the WWE in the locker room there, you know, didn't really warm up to him. They thought maybe he had an attitude, maybe Big Show was cocky or an asshole or something like that, because he came from WCW, who knows, but I don't think he was really well liked at first. And I think they sent the Big Show down to OVW to kind of maybe straighten out his attitude and straighten out his weight. The problem is he came back heavier than he was when he left. And Big Show comes out there to number 23 to a huge pop. The fans in the audience didn't get spoiled. They had no idea the guy was coming back, so the roof blows off that place. Big Show runs out, and he's wearing, it almost looks like a belly shirt. He had gained so much fucking weight that the shirt didn't even fit him anymore the way it used to, and his belly was sticking out. He looked like a college chick on spring break. But he comes out there to such a huge reaction, and he gets in the ring, and he completely fucking cleans house, throws some devastating choke slams on everybody, completely lays waste to about 7 or 8 guys that are in the ring, and finally, The Rock stops him, kicks him in the balls, and actually eliminates the Big Show, gives him a few right hands, backs him up against the ropes, and then clotheslines him over the top rope. So Big Show comes out there, destroys everybody, and gets eliminated right away in about a minute and a half. And now we're into the fourth chapter of the Royal Rumble, and this is where all hell starts to break loose. Big Show's pissed that he got eliminated, so he grabs The Rock by the ankle, drags him underneath the bottom rope, gets him on the outside of the ring, and choke slams him through the announce table. So now Rock is completely incapacitated on the outside of the ring, but he's not eliminated. Meanwhile, in the ring, the remaining guys all gang up on Caine, and they got him in the corner, and it's going to be about 6 or 7 of them trying to eliminate the guy finally. And who comes out at number 25? Big Brother Undertaker. Now, there was a lot of speculation before the Rumble if these two guys were going to be on the same page. Caine, I think, was coming off a heel run during this time, and the brothers were at odds. They had had some pay-per-view matches together the year prior, so a lot of fans were wondering if they were finally going to be together again and team up to dominate the Royal Rumble, and that's exactly what happened. Taker comes out just as Caine's about to get eliminated and kicks the shit out of everybody, and then he and Caine just completely clean house and toss everybody out and stand in the ring alone. And in another brilliant moment of comedy in between all of this drama and all of this excitement, as Caine and Undertaker are standing in the ring all by themselves waiting for the next guy to come out. Who's the next guy? Fucking Scotty 2 Hotty. That is great. The poor schmuck comes out there. He almost tiptoes out into the aisleway, and his eyes are bulging out of his head. He is fucking scared shitless, and he kind of slowly walks to the ring, and he knows he's just going to go out there and get executed. So finally, he almost just sucks it up, takes his gear off, and just climbs in the ring and surrenders himself and just lets himself get his ass kicked. They pummel him. I think there's a choke slam or two, and then they both just toss him right over the top rope. So Scotty 2 Hotty is gone in a matter of seconds, and the Brothers of Destruction are standing in there alone again. This time when the buzzer goes off, it wouldn't be a jobber, it would be Stone Cold Steve Austin. Crowd goes fucking apeshit, and then yet another great turn and twist in this match as Austin is walking down the aisle. Triple H attacks him from behind. Payback time, bitch. Austin had sabotaged Triple H's title match earlier on in the night. Now Triple H is out there to fuck up Austin's chances of winning the Royal Rumble. And he lays an absolute brutal beatdown on Stone Cold, drags him all the way back to the entrance, starts slamming him on the lights and using chairs, busts Austin wide open. I mean, Austin juiced hard. He had blood all around the top and back of his head and front of his face. I mean, he was a mess. So you have Austin laying in a pool of his own blood all the way, 50 feet away from the ring, and you have The Rock surrounded by a broken announce table on the outside of the ring and a few guys in the ring. It's another reason why I love this Royal Rumble, because it was all over the place. You had shit happening everywhere. You had outside interference, you had surprises, you had violence, you had guys, blading and getting bloody. I mean, you had elements in there for everybody. It was one of the most exciting, I think, Royal Rumble matches of all time because there was so much going on. Now, by this point, The Rock had started coming to. He had gotten back in the ring and was fighting with everybody, and we had another surprise entrant at number 29. And this one caught everybody off guard. Nobody saw this coming. Guess who it was? Haku. I loved this. I marked out huge for this. I don't know if any, casual wrestling fans at the time might have not even known who he was. He was previously in WCW as Ming, but he didn't really have a really high-profile role there. And when he was Haku in the WWE, a lot of those fans might not have even remembered him. So he comes out as a huge surprise, comes out to the old Head Shrinkers tag team theme music, gets in the ring and starts kicking ass. And I remember shortly after this, I think he tag teamed up with Rikishi, and they had some matches with Undertaker and Caine, and I was happy Haku was back. Just about everybody involved in the wrestling business universally refers to Haku as one of the toughest motherfuckers ever in wrestling, like legitimately tough, like kill you with his bare fucking hands kind of tough. I mean, this guy was not to be messed with, and he had a lot of respect, and I was glad the WWE brought him back in for a contract, because WCW, they were like 2 months away or 3 months away from completely going under. I mean, that ship was going down. If it was the Titanic, it would have already broken in half, and that last piece would have just been bobbing there. That's all that was left of WCW. So it was nice to see a few guys leap off and join the WWE before the ship would completely sink and there was the buyout. Now, number 30, the final entrant, was already known. It was going to be Rikishi. I forget why, but they already knew he was going to be the 30th entrant. I believe he won a match that gave him that right, probably on Raw, but I don't remember the specifics. So he was in at number 30, and he starts coming out. Austin, who had been completely laid out all the way up until this point, finally starts coming to just as Rikishi is getting into the ring, and Austin charges and attacks him from behind and gets in the ring, and Austin, completely bloody, has recovered enough to get into the ring, and now he's in the Rumble match. The Rock is now also back in the ring after being completely annihilated by the Big Show on the announce table. So Austin and Rock are in there with a few other guys, Caine, Billy Gunn, Rikishi, Haku, even Undertaker. I think those were the final guys in the ring. Now, the final four turned out to be Austin, Rock, Caine, and Billy Gunn. Taker got eliminated by Rikishi, and then I think Rikishi and Haku got eliminated by Rock and Austin. So your final four was there, but it didn't last long. They got rid of Billy Gunn really quick, and your final three was Austin, Rock, and Caine. Now, finally, Austin and Rock are each laying in the corner, and for the first time in the match, they lock eyes. Caine is completely out of it in another corner, and Austin and Rock each stand up in their respective corners, and the fans start popping because they know Austin and Rock are about to come to blows for the first time in a long time. Actually, now that I think about it, they might have in that Hell in the Cell match the month prior at Armageddon, but really, these two guys as baby faces, this was huge to see them together, and finally they got in the center of the ring and just started wailing on each other right away, start brawling lefts and rights. Each guy knocked the other one down. Very Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan-ish. Finally, Caine gets involved. Austin ends up tossing Caine through the ropes, or maybe Rock did, but Caine flies out of the ring, allowing Austin and Rock to brawl some more. Now, Rock has got Austin almost eliminated. Caine gets back into the ring, comes from behind, tosses both guys out. The Rock hits the floor, but Austin hangs onto the ropes, so Rock is out and Austin is still in. And the final two men are Steve Austin and Caine. Fucking Caine. This guy came in at number 6. This 7-foot, 300-pounder's been out there for a fucking hour. He's eliminated a dozen guys, and now he's the last guy in the ring with Stone Cold. This was fucking great. Just such an unconventional Royal Rumble. I just absolutely loved it. Now, these guys continue to brawl. Austin hits Caine, I think, with a couple of stunners. Caine goes outside of the ring again to get a chair and won one of my favorite finishes to a Royal Rumble match ever. After Caine not only had taken an unbelievable beating in the Royal Rumble, he was dishing it out as well. Austin, who is a complete mess, covered in blood, crusted up blood, his shoe is untied, he's barely able to stand, grabs the chair and nails Caine not once, not twice, but 3 unbelievable chair shots to the head, and then backs up and clotheslines Caine right over the top rope. Austin almost goes out himself, only to fling back into the ring and land on his back. I would say probably the most well done and most dramatic finish to a Royal Rumble ever. My favorite Royal Rumble of all time. I loved everything about it, and I really loved the winner because I'm a huge Stone Cold Steve Austin fan. I loved him in those days, and that was a great moment. That match had everything. I mean, I just remember we were all yelling and screaming. I mean, yeah, we were hammered, we were drinking beer and enjoying the show, but it was so enjoyable to watch. It holds up to this day, too, because I went back and watched it again to prepare for this review, and if you go back and check it out on the WWE Network or you have the tape or DVD or something, just watch it again. It's just awesome. I don't remember ever being entertained by a Royal Rumble like that ever again. There were some good ones. I like 2002. I like 2004, maybe one or two others, but really that one in 2001 was by far my favorite of all time. I don't know how you can top that. Seriously, I don't. I mean, it really had something for everyone, and the winner, was not a definite. Nobody knew. I mean, Rock was in that thing, too. It could have easily been The Rock. It could have easily been Stone Cold. It could have easily been Undertaker. We've never seen a Rumble that spilled over that much as far as like outside the ring and extracurricular stuff and outside weapons and just all that shit. And it also led to probably one of the best WrestleManias of all time as well. So 2001 was pretty hot and cooking there, especially those first few months before the invasion got underway and kind of ruined everybody's opinion of the WWE. But prior to that, they were hitting on all cylinders on these pay-per-views. I even remember after WrestleMania, they had the backlash with Undertaker and Caine against Austin and Triple H once they aligned with each other. Even the Judgment Day after that when they had separate singles matches with each other. Of course, the month after this Royal Rumble when The Rock won the belt back from Kurt Angle. I mean, they were just unbelievable during this time of 2001. And for this Royal Rumble to have 4 championship matches, 3 of them being outstanding, as well as an amazing Royal Rumble match itself, I got to give this pay-per-view an A. Possibly maybe a B+ if you take off a few extra points for the China bullshit, which was dumb, and maybe a couple of other things that weren't that great about the pay-per-view, but overall, it was amazing. So I appreciate you listening if you're actually still with me. My next review will probably be a DVD review. I'll probably go back to a DVD, and I've been toying with the idea of one, and it would be highly controversial if I did it, but I was looking at my DVD shelf and I said, maybe it's time I do that review. And hopefully if I do decide to do it, it will not cripple anyone's opinions of me. So thanks again for tuning in to my latest review, and as always, please like and follow and subscribe to the channel on Facebook and Twitter and all that good shit, and I will catch you guys very, very soon. Until next time, peace.